GDP is a magical number many people blindly think tells you if the economy is good or bad, or if your nation is doing better than other nations. What it tells you is how much money exchanged hands, meaning how productive and how many new goods and services we produce that year. America made $20 trillion in new goods and services last year. That can mean it made a lot of good things, but it can also mean that it made a lot of things for disaster or things that polluted the environment. However, even if it was all good, GDP means that we should all be getting the benefits from that GDP. $20 trillion is a lot of money. Most people think American income is spread out like this in, say, 5 brackets, with people in the middle bracket getting the average amount of income. If the US was to divide up GDP among all working age people equally, each working adult would make about $97K per year. However, instead it works more on a bell curve. I believe the market forces and gamification of money are essential, so there should be some slight income inequality, especially for people whose efforts increase wages for all, as defined by liberal philosopher John Rawls. A podcast on his thoughts on liberal ideology is listed below. Sadly, around 70% of all the top 10% inherited their wealth, and then used that wealth to generate more wealth in stocks off of the labor of lower paid workers. 30% got their wealth from being good at innovating in business. Almost never in innovating things like inventions. And by business innovations, we most often mean figuring out how to get around labor and regulations through technicalities. The Silicon Valley boom is essentially just a fancy way to get around labor laws using computers. True innovators rarely stand a chance to be in the top 10% these days, as they're most often to be easily exploited by the business innovators. There's an article below discussing how, while we loathe the top 0.1%, the other top 9.9% do what they can to change the laws to get advantages for their children over ours, so they can remain in a perpetual cycle of wealth while pretending to be in a meritocracy. However, no matter what, the average American should be making at least $97,000 per year. Instead, the median income or GDP per capita is $58K. When I first wrote this video, I forgot to include extra benefits like healthcare, and that comes to $71,000 on average. 3/4 of what it should be. When we stopped unionizing, stopped raising minimum wage, and stopped providing social services and equal opportunity, destroying all possibilities for a true meritocracy as defined by John Rawls, you get rich people unfairly stealing your labor every day and figuring out new ways to screw you at the checkout counter. If you currently make $58,000, you deserve a 1/4 raise, and that would take nothing away from a rich person's current wealth, just lower the increase in their income from stocks. However, worldwide GDP is around $107.5 trillion per year. Divide that among all working age adults and you get just $22,000 per person per year. This is because of corruption, bad supply chains, and crappy infrastructure caused by corruption. So, as much as we're getting screwed, we're still doing better than we should compared to the rest of the world. Mostly because we exploited their nations and stripped them of their wealth and resources, passing the savings on to us and making us less likely to vote against doing so, as we have a stake in the current system, even if we're getting 1/4 less of the American pie that's owed us. I would be more than willing to forego my 1/4 raise if instead the money was used to help build infrastructure of the world so GDP worldwide would rise. I wouldn't notice the difference. But instead of that, money is going to increase corporate returns to stockholders, adding to their already massive wealth. It would raise worldwide GDP and investment, infrastructure, and stability, and make up for some of the benefits I got from our nation and companies screwing them over in the past, as they're currently already using these nations to extract labor from, so they don't have to pay me 1/4 more. GDP, the number value of how much you are getting screwed, and even worse, how much the rest of the world is getting screwed by corporations.